Good morning, everybody. It's Ben Baker. It's Your Brand Marketing on the Your Living Brand Show. Welcome. It is Wednesday. It is the 13th of September. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. And thank you very much for joining us once again. This show is all about how different companies add value in the marketplace. Every week, we interview another guest and we find out from them what makes them different, what makes them unique, what's the story they like to tell, why do customers like them, and why do people do business with them? Because you know what? Every business is unique. Every business has its own story to tell. You don't need to be commodity. It doesn't matter if you sell nails or if you sell Lear jets or anything in between. Every company is unique. Everybody does something a little bit differently. Everybody has a niche that they can sit into. And by doing that, you take yourself from being another one of many to one of one, or one of very few. And when you do that, you raise your level of expertise, you get people to notice you, and you get people to understand, you know what, why they should actually spend money with you instead of your competition. So that's what this show is about. My name is Ben Baker. My company is Your Brand Marketing. What we do Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, is we consult with our clients, we teach, and we also speak on brand, message, market, vision, and value. Our goal is to understand who you are, what you do, why you do it, who your customers are, why they care about you, and get them to understand your value. So come and talk to us. We'd love to have a conversation. Now, this week, I've got something a little special for you guys. Our guest this week is Collin Bissoondatt. Collin is absolutely unique in his own industry. He is probably an industry of one or two or maybe three, maybe in Canada. What he is he is Canada's Employee Termination Professional. Now, I'm going to let him tell you the story. We've pre-recorded this, and I'm going to get to the video in a second. But Collin goes into companies and helps mitigate the risk to the brand, to the company itself, to the employees, and to be able to let people go in a humane way that allows for people to move on and be able to be constructive instead of keeping people within a corporation that either no longer are useful or could be utilized by the corporation, or they're toxic to the company and they need to be let go. So let's get to Collin and let's hear his story, and I'll be back with you in a minute. Welcome, Collin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. And yourself?
Excellent. It's a beautiful day. You know, the weather's it's been warm up here in Vancouver. It's been amazingly warm.
Going through a bit of a heat wave for a change in Vancouver, almost hitting that 30 mark.
I can't complain about that. I love it when it's warm. I love it when it's cold. You know what? Vancouverites will complain about anything. So you know what? I take the weather for what it is and enjoy it every day.
Yes.
So, you know, as I was telling telling everybody off the air, says you have a really, really unique company. You know, Canada's Employee Termination Professional. Now, this is a story that needs to be told, and the only person that can tell it is you, Collin. So tell me about the brand. Tell me the story of the company and where you came from, where you are, and where you're going.
Okay. The easiest way to say it is I used to be in the restaurant industry where I'd go in, turn restaurants around. That would be the entire menu, the seating, the decor, and the people, which is usually the biggest component. And around 2013, I started to see the emergence of a topic that scared me and my business plan. And that was food trends, where certain restaurants and cuisine types would be a trend for a year.
Mm-hmm.
In my approach, I like to create long-term family favorites that you continuously return to regardless, year after year, and that brings back the long-term repeat customers. Food trends does the complete opposite of that. If I am the food trend of that year, we strike gold. If not, we could be hitting a rock bottom because people could be constantly comparing in a negative way of which is superior or inferior.
Right.
So I had to come up with something that was better, but something that also related to the skills that I brought to the place. So I did a bit of research and then decided to see what skills apply outside of the food industry people want. And I put them on a business card. Ending personal relationships, terminating staff, and closing down restaurants and turning them around. So turning around businesses and doing a business overview. Employee termination came number 1. Ending personal relationships came number 2. And so that's what I focused on.
It's amazing. It's amazing that, people would be upfront and open with that, with outside of the company. That's the number one thing that blows me away, is that people are willing to have those conversations outside of their inner circle.
That's right. And because I noticed that, as well as the general discomfort around these difficult conversations, I decided to say, let's see where I'll go with this. So I started with employee terminations, and then I started getting requests to end personal relationships on the side in conjunction. And then associations started coming to me and saying, look, we need somebody to be delivering the message when they know somebody's designation, accreditation is going to be revoked. Would you be doing that? That's the natural extension of what I do. So I continued expanding with that. And more personal options came along the way, and those are available, but they're not my focus. They're bonus or on demand.
Right. So let's go into these one at a time. Let's go into the corporate situation where, we're dealing with a situation where a company is having to do, some realignment, or, they're running into some serious financial problems or whatever. How would this process work for you? Like, how would people contact you? How do people know about you? How do people understand your value? And where do you get your referrals from?
Most of my referrals come from past clients, but unfortunately, because I can't do any advertising, well, actually, I choose not to do any advertising. I can't have such an entire web presence or advertising. How would you say, opinion or market like a traditional company?
Right.
Because I believe not in discretion, because all I'm doing is solving problems. I don't want to go around telling the world what other companies had faced. And I also understand a lot of companies don't want that to be public knowledge. So by maintaining a level of discretion and pairing it with non-disclosure agreements, I ensure that's in place in advance. It gives up a lot of advertising power on my part, but it also enables a lot of referrals from clients in the past where they can say to their friends who are having trouble, this guy knows what he's doing. I trust him. He solved problems. And that is the hardest type of what you'd call social validation to earn in business.
Absolutely. Trust is a huge factor, and especially in what you do, because it's their brand. It's their brand that's in jeopardy. If you don't handle the situations properly, if people are not let go in a way that's, safe and meaningful and whatever. Oh, it looks like we've lost Collin for a second. There he is. He's right back. We deal with a situation where, people's brands can be in jeopardy because of something that you do. So obviously you must have some real, hardcore strategies in place and, policies and procedures that you work out ahead of time with these companies to make sure that when you're doing layoffs for them, when you're helping them transition people out of the company and hopefully helping them move into something, better, that it's going to allow them to feel, not anger and mistrust and hatred for the company that they've been fired from, and therefore, create brand problems for them.
What I actually do is prepare all this in advance, because Canada is actually broken down into 13 separate jurisdictions.
Right.
I already have a game plan in place. So part of the value that I have, but I never really discuss, is me constantly learning of all the changes going coast to coast. So we're seeing many landmark decisions come through where in one jurisdiction it's acceptable, another jurisdiction it's not. A prime example of that would be the recent TTC cannabis case, where there's a 10 milligram on the job limitation, but that only applies for the TTC. Out here in BC, where I'm based, there's
Sorry,
actually
TTC. Explain the acronym.
Toronto Transit System.
There we go.
Yeah.
Just so people know what the acronyms mean, just to be on the safe side. So what happens in Ontario would not necessarily be in effect in BC.
That is correct. And so I do have 13 different profiles across the country, and they're essentially master templates that everything is built off of, based on the client, where they're geographically located and the situation that's in place. This is to handle both not only my national scope, but to go to any company and say, okay, you need me to say close down a plant in New Brunswick, and you need to shut down a mine in Saskatchewan. Well, I already have the knowledge on hand, and we just tailor it from there to their specific needs.
Right. And so do you have employment lawyers that you work with to make sure that those templates are always up to date, and that the law is always at the leading edge?
Yes, I do. I have different lawyers in every single province, and we have monthly updates for each and every one of them. So
okay.
That's all behind the scenes, nobody sees, but I like to have that level of confidence in the quality of product that I'm producing. And when clients ask questions about recent changes, I can speak with authority to it.
Yeah, and that's important, because people need to know that you understand not only their industry and not only their situation, but the differentiating factors that could happen if they're if they have Manitoba plant and if they have a BC plant, and the rules and regulations could be different based on the jurisdiction.
That is correct. It usually is different, and that's why I quickly decided to go straight to the 13 district method.
Right. Right. So how do you make your clients understand your value? I mean, you can't go out there and you can't advertise in a traditional matter. That's something that you just can't do, and that's fine. So how do you go about when you're meeting a new client, and say they have been referred to you, so there is a level of understanding there to begin with? How do you get them to quickly and efficiently understand your value, understand your unique selling proposition, and how you can help them in a quick and efficient way?
The first thing I do is actually ask them to bring the HR lawyers into the meeting, because they will be able to call me out on anything that I may say wrong. That
right.
also provides a demonstration of the knowledge that I come with, because they're the ones who would have the academic, or what you could say, the theoretical approach down, and most likely to see the risks of any approach, of anything that's done during a meeting or during the services provided. So I actually request more pressure, which is counter to everybody else's approach.
Right.
The second part is I let them ask me all the questions they want. I won't give away my secret sauce of how I do it, the in-person, the dynamics, especially when you're talking about 4 to 5 generations in the workplace across multiple cultures, the way wording directly impacts people based on their experiences and cultural common associations. Mm-hmm. There are certain phrases you don't use in certain parts of the country, or generally not in certain parts of the country, because they tend to be harder hitting, and they also have a history of being utilized. So it's things like that that go a long way. And when you have that discussion, you see the comfort level as well as the confidence there in the client, because I know I'm in a very high trust situation that requires no hesitation. And I believe there's been too much hesitation usually by the time clients get to me to say, let's start firing people, with the exception of mass terminations.
Exactly. And, you brought up an interesting thing is that a lot of these major corporations have, employment lawyers either on staff or on retainer. So why would they use you instead of using people that they already deal with?
It's simple. These employment lawyers, or the labor relations, are actually working with the people that are terminated. So they also often have an internal moral as well as emotional impact, which I don't have. So if you're terminating your colleagues that you go to lunch for, you have meetings, you've been working on projects for, you understand not only them, but the families who will be impacted and the implications of sudden changes, depending on whatever stage it is from a termination to a court appearance to formal charges, revoking designations. These are situations that nobody really likes to be associated with. I'm on the opposite side. I don't have any connection with the people generally. There have been a few exceptions,
Mm-hmm.
but I can deliver that message without any concerns or issues. The other factor is I don't get emotionally invested in these people. So the toll and the wear and tear on the moral soul or emotional heart isn't there either. I've created a system behind the scenes that nobody is privy to in general, but it's to ensure I don't have burnout or have and start to go down the route of substance abuses or things like that other people before me who have tried to do this have gone down.
Right. So you're coming in to actually perform a service. You're not there to hold their hand afterwards. You're not there to help them transition to a new job. You're not there to, help them support their family. You're there to make sure that the actual termination is done in the most humane way possible, given the situation that these people are in. They're being fired. One way or the other. They're either being fired personally or they're being fired as part of a mass firing, which either way, is emotionally trying for a lot of different people. And if you can be the person to come in there, do the actual terminating for people, and then bring them back to the employment lawyers, bring them back to the HR departments where they can sit there and say, okay, now that we know that you're no longer going to be working for us, let us help you transition to the next stage. Those people are in a better position to be dealing with somebody that's going to be more emotionally ready to deal with them than be ready to deal with you, correct?
Absolutely. They tend to be a lot less violent. They tend to be less angry and more accepting of the situation, where you have that calm down period of saying, understanding, okay, this isn't a topic for debate. This is a decision. And that's something you see with the C-levels, particularly where they're used to having that discussion with board members over topics and situations and choices that can and can't be hammered out. When I come in there, it's a final decision. And that's a huge gap in what most people are used to in the workplace. There's been this huge growth in collaborative environments and everybody getting an opinion and choice at sharing their point of view. I'm a situation where you don't get that. And
Right.
that can create a lot of conflict quickly. Most people are not comfortable in that situation, and that's part of the value that I bring, or I should say the experience that I bring, because I'm used to seeing people, staring into their eyes, watching challenges or hopes that they had suddenly put on hold or possibly even crushed. It is a difficult situation, but at the same time, if you're able to do it humanely and with dignity, you actually ensure that whoever they speak to regarding whether transitional services or the loved ones they're going to go home to so they can have a mourning period are actually not going to be lashed out upon or subject to those more volatile emotions.
Right. It gives them someone external to put their anger against that they're not going to see again. It allows them to go back and be able to deal with the people internally with the company and be able to move forward probably a lot more easily and a lot quicker.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, the one thing I remember you and I talking about is that a lot of times you get brought in when it's a family situation, whether it be, a mother-in-law that needs to be fired or a son that needs to be fired or, cousin Bob that needs to be fired. In these family situations, that's got to be, even tougher within organizations because there's not just an employee. It's not just someone who's been with you for 30 years. It's family. It's someone that, that's potentially been around the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner table. And, that's got to be a really difficult situation as well. So having you come in has got to add some real, value to those people because it's something they don't have to do themselves.
Yes, it is a huge value there. And often some of these family-run businesses will go the extra step and put in things like restraining orders to say that you cannot come to talk to the business, you cannot talk to family members about the business or show up on the workplace site and past clients. And I know that's a really, really bad way to end a relationship, but at the same time, I understand I need to protect the company. And when you're
Right.
delivering that specific, that kind of hard news, it
Hmm.
needs to be done in such a way there's no room for error, there's no wafting of possibilities, it's clear, it's cutthroat, and there's no emotional attachment where you're doing it with tears in your eyes or a sully in your voice where you're choking up. You need to have it crystal clear, it's definitive, it's official. And that is a situation where I originally started in, where I was helping out families get rid of helping families get rid of family members in their own companies. And this went a long way into building up credibility quickly for me in the greater Vancouver area.
Right. And you know what? That's a really gut wrenching, thing to do, and it's hard to do. And trust me, firing a family member, I've had to do it. It's not a great thing to do. It's never a lot of fun. And you know what? It really, if not done properly, can really split families apart.
Absolutely.
And that's something that, bringing in a third party, if I'd known that had been available, might have been something that could have, salvaged some relationships that, that didn't need to be, destroyed because of the situation and how it came about.
Absolutely, yes. And that splitting you spoke about within families, that also could reverberate to the workplace. So having a split even within your own family business with the remaining staff is a bigger problem you don't want to have to face. So
Right. So tell me about, I mean, you can't name names and you can't talk about situations specifically. I understand that. But give me an idea. If someone comes up to you and says, we've got 300 people, 500 people that need to be terminated en masse, how would you go about the process with these people? Like how would you put from beginning to end? What are the key things that you'd want companies to look at and to think about how you can help them and how you can make it easier for them?
actually, I've streamlined the process for that very well. Before starting, I realized all the other options that are out there usually took between 15 to 20 pages of paperwork. I've streamlined it down to 3.5 pages, and that includes the mass terminations. So so it's essentially a checklist, and it's also a scope list for me understanding what needs to be done and what locations.
Mm-hmm.
It tells me the amount of people, where I'm going to be traveling to, how I'm going to be delivering it to them, any assets that need to be extracted back from them, such as company cell phones, laptops, vehicles, car passes, passwords, VPNs, you name it. You get that all built in. I go through with the client and say, okay, what do you need done? And I fill out that scope checklist while I'm talking with them. And the reason why I fill it out is so that when I give it to them to confirm what is needed, almost all the work's already done.
Right.
And that goes a long way for people because they all of a sudden are taking what used to take 20 plus pages, plus the legal, plus checking with the corporate lawyers, and removing one of the biggest components, which is who's going to do it, how's the logistics around it going to occur, how are we going to return our assets, and when is it going to be done? So I fill out that checklist, send it to them, they look it over and say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
And all they have to do commit is either send a digital transfer or a check and confirm the appointment time, and I will be there.
Right. But when you're dealing with large groups like that, would I mean, say you have 500 people, that takes a lot, even with 3 pages worth of documentation, you're probably talking 20 minutes to half an hour a person before you can get back all the passwords and this and that and the other thing. Are you doing this in groups of people, or are you doing it actually individually? Because if you're doing it individually, the rumor mill is got to be running rampant through the facility while you're terminating people.
I tend to do it in small groups of people, no more than 15. The reason for that is mob mentality. If somebody wants to act out, everybody will feel less responsible for relieving their anger or issues towards me. I don't like to provide that. Instead, what I usually do is provide a template for people to fill out. And by the way they're filling out and their expressions to the questions tell me a lot about their current mental and emotional capacity at that time.
Right.
And that goes a long way for controlling the situation, but also being able to sit down people, say, if you let 10 people out and 5 people need a little more time, you have a better understanding of the room, the people, and what they need to really step forward and continue on with their life.
So it's humanizing the process. It's not just, by the way, tomorrow you're fired. It's giving these people a human way out of this situation, trying to diffuse the anger within the situation, trying to make it as simple and as easy as possible for the people that are being terminated, so that you don't build the anger within the room.
I usually let the anger build a little bit in the room, but there's some more stuff there I can't say on camera because it'll give away some of my trips.
Sure.
But I think anger is healthy, but it needs to be expressed in the right way, let out the right way, and that you have to humanize it and take the time to listen to people, because anger for people means various different things.
Yep.
It can mean acting out, it can be yelling, it can be shouting, it can be a sense of betrayal at the same time, particularly with long-term employees who put in 20, 30 plus years of their lives and all of a sudden are being let go with an hour's notice and a check that's pre-printed and clearly the company knew about weeks or possibly months in advance.
Right.
So those situations require a lot more personalization and attention to details that occur in the way that I've created things.
But it's also creating a position of empathy. You understand that people are going to get angry. You understand that people are going to get frustrated, and you're looking at body language to understand the clues so things don't escalate too quickly. The mob mentality doesn't, get there, and then all of a sudden the whole situation gets out of focus.
That's right. And that's part of the concerns that came up when I spoke to people before me who tried to become a termination professional, a termination specialist they referred to in the 80s and the 90s. And they spoke about these situations where mob mentality took over, or they did not see clear signs of people getting ready to throw a fist at you or throw an item at you. And that also applies into the various environments. So like what I do in a grocery store would be drastically different from what I do in a production plant.
And that's important to realize, that there isn't a cookie cutter approach. Every client is different. Every situation is different, and you need to customize. Yes, you have your 3-page document. Yes, you have certain policies and procedures, but everything needs to be customized to deal with the situation that's being put in front of you. Yes. And that's a real value.
Yes, I don't call it value. I just say making sure that the client's needs are addressed. And when I say client, it's not just the client, the company, it's also the person that's being terminated, because they are on the receiving end of my services as well.
Absolutely. So. Well, I call it value, Collin. Whether you want to call it value or not, I call it valuable, because it's a lot easier to say you're fired and walk out of a room than it is to sit there and actually say, I'm sorry, we're having to let you go. Here's the process that's going to go on to be able to do that, and sit there in the room with these people and watch them get angry and hear them get angry and listen to them get angry and still go through the policies and procedures with them. So there is a difference between those two styles, and I think yours is far more the latter than it will ever be the former.
Every now and then I've had to do the former, but I don't like to do it in general.
Yeah.
There are situations where it is called for, but I prefer to do the latter because of the personalized approach and the ability to better control the outcome, which everybody wants to be a smooth transition.
Perfect. Well, Collin, it's been a great conversation with you. I got one last question. I ask it to everybody, as they walk out the door.
Okay.
As you walk out the door, and as your clients see you leave and you get in your car and you drive away, what's the one thing you want people to think about you and Canada's Employee Termination Professional when you're not in the room?
I don't have a clear answer for that. The closest one I've had is when I'm at networking events and people are saying goodbye to everybody. Everybody would say the same thing. I hope never to see you again. And that may sound odd to everybody else, but to me it's actually heartwarming because my brand has stuck out. and that they understand what I do, how I do it, and that I have no problem visiting any location in the country. That I like. What I do want people to remember me by is I'm a different solution to a people problem. Right now we're going through a phase where everybody's throwing money and education at solving absolutely any diversity or concerns with teams to be going forward. And as history has shown, throwing money at the problem doesn't always work. At some point you have to say, enough is enough. You need a new solution, and it's without that person, or that team, or that division. Whatever it is, a decision has to be made to go forward with less.
And that's a tough decision to make. But when those decisions need to be made, it's good to know that there's people like you available to be able to help people through that transition.
Absolutely.
Well, you know what, Collin? Thank you very much for your time. Hang out in the green room. I will be right back. I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody, and I will see you in a minute.
All right.
So thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for listening in. Collin was a phenomenal guest. The interaction was a lot of fun. The interview went a little bit longer than I thought it would, but you know what? It was great information, and I was happy to let him talk because he was providing some real valuable information. Next week, we have a guest for you by the name of Mark Graham. Mark is a buddy of mine. I've probably known Mark for 6 or 7 years now. Mark has got a company called Common Skew. And he saw a problem in the marketplace and went looking for a cookie cutter solution and couldn't find it. So you know what he did? He created his own. He created it for an internal company, but then he decided, you know what? This is something valuable. This is something that other people can use. And you know what? I'm going to give it to everybody else, and I'm going to be able to go out there and sell it on the marketplace. And he's done a phenomenal job at that. And I'll let Mark tell his story next week. But once again, guys, it's Ben Baker. This has been the Your Living Brand Show. It's all about being unique. It's all about what makes you special. It's all about those little things that you do to differentiate yourself. Come talk to me. We'll be more than happy to work with you and look at you as a company and sit there and say, what makes you special, and help tell your story, because everybody has their own story. Everybody has a unique way of being in the world and a different way of providing a solution for a customer that's theirs. You don't need every customer in the world. You need your customers, and you need your customers to understand who you are, what you do, and what your value is. My name is Ben Baker. My company is YourBrandMarketing.com, and I can't wait to talk to you next week. See you then.